I recorded horrifying tales of cybercrime, and unleashed a malevolent darkness online. I never should have opened that door. The moment my hands touched the cold handle, a chill raced down my spine. It felt wrong, like a whisper warning me to turn back. Yet, I was too curious, too desperate for answers. In my ordinary life, I had a routine. I woke, brewed coffee, and scrolled through the endless cycle of mundane content. Then I stumbled on dark web forums, eerie discussions about identities stolen and lives shattered. I recorded the stories, captivated by the adrenaline rush. But it was different now. Darkness seeped through my computer screen, creeping into my thoughts. Whispers tugged at the edges of my mind, urging me to dig deeper. The clicking of my keyboard felt loud in the silence of my room. Shadows danced across the walls, stretching and contorting. A sweat broke out on the back of my neck. I heard a faint static, a low hum under my breath. My heart pounded. Was it the wind? No, it was something else. Something alive. I looked around, but only the flickering light from the screen illuminated the suffocating darkness. Then, a thump echoed from the hallway. My breath caught. I glanced at the door, heart racing. What was that? Just the house settling, a trick of my anxious mind, I told myself. But the thump came again, louder, more insistent. I couldn't ignore it. My feet moved against my will, inching closer to the door. Every sense screamed at me to stop. The cold draft swirled around me, sadness and fear mingling in the air. I felt like I was being watched, a presence lingering just beyond the threshold. The silence cracked, a cacophony of whispers spilling into the room. You shouldn't have touched that door, they seemed to say, clutching the doorknob. I hesitated. I could feel its chill seep through my skin, a silent invitation to another world. What lay beyond? My mind raced, battling curiosity and terror. Just as I was about to step back, the door swung open with a creak that reverberated through my entire being. And there it was, a shadowy figure standing before me, a darkness so thick it felt alive. I froze. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. It shifted, inching closer, and my heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I was trapped in some twisted nightmare, and the door slammed shut behind me. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I was engulfed in darkness, the room pulsing with a thick, cloying dread. As the figure stepped closer, the shadows formed and reformed around it as if trying desperately to escape. It wore a face not of flesh or bone, but of swirling void, with hollow eyes that reflected nightmares. Those eyes drew me in, as if they held every sorrow I had ever felt, every regret gnawing at me like a ravenous creature that I couldn't move or speak. My body was paralyzed by terror. The figure reached out, impossibly elongated fingers stretching towards me, whispering without sound, weaving around my thoughts like a serpent. Every fiber of my being screamed for release, to wake from this nightmare, but deep down, a morbid fascination kept me rooted in place. It was then that I heard the laptop screen emit a low chimean notification. My heart pounded in my chest, building an insatiable rhythm that began to drown out the whispers. Reality felt elastic, stretched between the horror in front of me and the glow of my laptop, still somehow serving as a portal to an ever-deepening abyss. With trembling hands, I reached for it, barely aware of the figure now looming inches from my face, its breath a chilling sensation, intangible yet suffocating. Maybe I could document what was happening, pull myself away from this burgeoning despair through some form of understanding. How naive I was. The words I had shared with the world had unleashed something that should never have been freed, the screen lit up with fresh notifications, more stories, more warnings from across the web. Each one spiraled deeper into madness, whispering of figures not unlike the one staring at me, twisted by desperation, marked by darkness. I clicked on the latest entry, my body still frozen, eliciting another chime. The words writhed across the screen like snakes, forming a real-time account of someone's final hours, someone whose heart had raced just like mine moments before. They see you, it read, and they want you. The macabre echo of their fate pulsed through my mind, inciting a sense of doom that clamped my heart like an iron vice. Suddenly, a piercing shriek sliced through the silence, reverberating from the hallway. I jerked back, my eyes snapping away from the screen for the first time, tearing my gaze from the entity before me. I didn't want to look, I knew something awful awaited me behind that threshold. Yet some instinct propelled me. I had to witness this, to understand that. I turned slowly toward the doorway. The hallway was bathed in an unholy sheen, as if illuminated by an unseen moon. Amidst the shadows, I could make out ghostly shapes dancing, their features fluid and ephemeral. They were faces filled with anguish, eyes wide with terror. I had opened a conduit to their suffering, and now they were flooding through. "Help us," they cried in a chorus, familiar voices from the very stories I had recorded. Before I could process their pleas, the ground beneath me trembled. Not with the sounds of footsteps, not yet, but with the weight of something far more ominous. The shadow next to me shifted again, its sinister presence growing bolder as though my fear fed its strength. It channeled my emotions, twisting them, distorting my very essence. I could feel it pulling, unraveling my thoughts, whispering enticing lies about power and invincibility, and I felt myself slipping foot by foot toward the edge of an unseen chasm. The figures in the hallway beckoned, their faces melding into one another as they reached for me, somehow both pleading and accusing. Just as I was about to turn back to the screen, the laptop emitted a final, agonizing wail. I looked down, captivated by its intensity. And there in bright, sickening letters was one name, mine. A jolt of pain cascaded through me, igniting a memory of each digit I had typed into the dark web. I had summoned all this. I had activated a conduit not just to their suffering but to mine. Panic erupted within me, a primal scream fighting to break free, but it was drowned out by the whispers of the approaching darkness. Just before losing my grasp on reality, the laptop screen flickered violently, and in its glow, for one horrid moment, I saw not my reflection but a violent tableau. The figures grasped others from the shadows, pulling them into their realm. But I was there, too. In that split second, I saw the figure that was once me, mouth open in a silent scream. Time stretched and snapped, pulling me between the two realms. A shattering crack echoed, and the lights flickered above, plunging the room into pitch darkness. As the whispers rose to a feverish pitch, I felt icy fingers lock around my wrist, drawing me back toward the door. Panic surged through my veins. This was it, I could either escape or be consumed. A desperate instinct clawed at my throat. I turned again to the screen, but it flashed one last message: "You are next." Then everything shattered. The door burst open, and as the figure lunged for me, I felt the icy grip begin to slip. Madness erupted within the void as I was torn between worlds. I had the choice to either succumb to the darkness embrace or fight back, and just as a sickening realization set in, I was yanked beyond the threshold, a twisted scream echoing in the darkness as the door swung shut behind me, sealing my fate. The darkness engulfed me with a ferocity I was unprepared for, wrapping itself around my senses like a suffocating shroud. I stumbled through the doorway into the hallway, the air thick with something viscous and agonizingly cold, as if I had plunged into the depths of an ancient abyss. The soft glow from my laptop faded rapidly, leaving only the disorienting shadows that rolled with an unnatural life. I whipped around, desperate to rupture the dimensions of this encroaching void, but the door was already closed, snapping shut with a dull thud that reverberated through the marrow of my bones. I reached for the knob, but it felt like grasping at smoke, slipping through my fingers without a trace. As I gripped it tighter, another wave of agony coursed through me, a visceral reminder that my flesh was still tethered to this world, if only tenuously. The shadows thickened, almost pulsating with a heartbeat of their own. They curled around me, a living entity, and within their depths, I could see shapes coalescing. Forms I recognized too well. Faces from the online stories I had consumed, their frozen terror etched eternally in their features. Eyes black and hollow, coated in a sour sheen of despair, stared back with palpable hunger. I had become an interloper in their plight, a newcomer to their tableau of agony. I stumbled forward, every breath heavier than the last. The floor beneath me felt alive, undulating in sync with my pounding heart. Sobs, distant yet close enough to touch, echoed from unseen corners, each one a reminder of those I had heedlessly invited into my life. I was enveloped by their sorrow, their grief, until it drowned out my thoughts, leaving only a roaring emptiness behind. "Help us please," they implored, a cacophony that rose and fell beneath the weight of the whispers that now encircled me. One of us, one of us. Their desire to be released, to pull me down into their fate, became a constant underscoring beat, dismantling my resolve piece by piece. Then, from beneath the grim layers of shadow, something began to extricate itself, a figure more terrible than the rest. Though the others were lost in their own wretchedness, this one drew itself up into a grotesque rectangle of shape and motion, its limbs wide and inviting yet grotesquely warped, like the collapsing architecture of a nightmare. From its mouth, a whispering chorus rose, each word dripping with malice and familiarity, threatening to seduce the very fabric of my consciousness. "Remember us," it hissed, voice swirling around me with their mournful cries, the echoes gnawing at my sanity. "Remember how you recorded us, how you drank in our suffering like a sickly elixir. We are forever linked now." Horror surged within me as I realized that each keystroke had acted as a binding, twisting my fate with theirs. I was not standing against their cries, I had become the vessel that unleashed their torment upon the world. The entity before me seemed to pulse with the knowledge of this connection, its hollow eyes reflecting back all the regret and fear that lodged itself in my throat. Another chime echoed faintly, an echo of the laptop that was now too far gone. "No!" I screamed, backing away. The coldness around me expanded as tendrils of shadow slithered forth, eager and sinuous, reaching out with grotesque desire. "I can't be like you," I cried, shaking my head as if I could dispel the truth with sheer will, but the words fell futilely into the smothering dark as my mind clawed frantically at the edges of understanding. With every fateful breath, the shadows danced closer, intertwining with the figure of malice as they whispered together, their treachery woven thick into the sound. "You will remember." Suddenly, a blinding light pierced through the darkness, forcing me to shield my eyes. It flickered erratically between the wall and the floor, immediately morphed into clusters of maddened faces, those lost to the darkness. They writhed in the light, unable to fully escape, their mouths open in screamless agony. "Let us out!" one figure shouted, finger pointing toward the darkness that clung so desperately to me. His face, distorted by despair, morphed into a shadow that mirrored the very entity whispering beside me, shifting fluidly to align with its features. "Join us," it hissed again, the shadows greedily encroaching. "It is the only escape." A terrifying thought gripped me, killing the laptop would sever this connection, freeing me from this nightmare. But as the weight of that decision pressed on my chest, I felt for a split second the chains of my own mind, how desperate I had become in my fear, how much I sought validation through those disturbing stories. And perhaps, deeper still, within me lingered the malevolent urge to capture and consume fear in its rawest form. In that moment of recognition, I felt the barrier of my sanity fray as I took one step back, knob fumbling desperately in my grasp as if it was a lifeline. But I couldn't look away from the faces, from the shadows clawing toward me, imploring me to become one of them. And then, from the farthest corners of the hall, a faint flicker of warmth splashed against the cold me phone. Had I not lost it? Was it somehow shining a light on my potential escape? In my desperation, I lunged forward toward the forsaken glow, but as my fingers grazed it, I was met with the sensation of icy steel cutting into muscly and impossibly long arm coiling tightly around my waist. I gasped as the dark figure leaned closer, mouth gaping wide, ready to swallow me whole. Too late, it exhaled, a breath that reeked of decay and despair. The shadows erupted around me, consuming my desperate screams as I felt myself trapped in their grasp, pulled inexorably toward the light. And then, with one last trembling gasp, the figure's hollow eyes bore down on me, whispering the final seal of my fate. "Remember, it is never over." The last vestige of light blinked out, and then, for the briefest moment, silence loomed. But beneath it, in the depths of my shattering mind, I heard a notification. The familiar chime. And with it, the chilling realization that I was not the only one who had been caught in this net. The echoing voices of countless others joined with an anguished cry. I was not the end, merely the beginning of a darker tale. The light flashed again, illuminating a new screen, and as I turned to see the message, my heart thudded in my chest with frightful finality. They are in your home. A shadow moved behind me where light could not reach, and as the chill seeped forward, ready to plunge me into their abyss, darkness slipped beneath my feet. I felt the weight of dread coil around my throat, squeezing tighter with each pulse of the malevolence lurking just beyond the veil of light. The screen flickered ominously, betraying the chaotic dance of shadows pooling beneath it, urging me onward as panic filled every inch of my being. The words "they are in your home" scrolled across my vision like an incantation, reverberating with pain and terror that I turned sharply, but the presence behind me drew nearer, a thick, pressing fog of despair that felt alive, pulling me further into its orbit. I strained to catch a glimpse, heart racing. Were they behind me? Did the horrors I conjured spill into my reality as spectral manifestations of a terrible truth? Or was it simply another illusion, a cruel trick of my cracking mind? I forced my eyes back to the laptop, mouth dry and trembling in uncertainty. The cursor blinked impatiently on the screen, inviting me to plunge deeper into the words that now seemed to pulsate with a life of their own. Every click that echoed in the stillness felt like a summons, a harbinger of something sinister. The list of horrifying tales I once sought became a cursed catalogue, each line saturated with a palpable yearning for escape, and escape that now meant relinquishing my soul. "Look closer," whispered a voice from the darkness, wrapped in a seductive lilt that sent icy tendrils of fear skittering down my spine. "What have you unleashed? What do they want?" The shadows behind me thickened, a sepulchral fog that twisted and teased at the edges of my vision. Faces manifested within that inky blackness, those I had admired, learned from, and desecrated with my narrations. Their mouths were silent, but the terror in their eyes screamed louder than any words could express. "Join us," a voice lilted, barely a breath in the clamorous silence that enveloped me. "You're already one of us." That I struggled against the palpable weight of its sensation of their despair, the yearning that crept insidiously into my heart like ivy twisting around a withering tree. I could feel the specters behind me pulling, searching for any fragment of weakness I might have erected. They craved a thread to bind me to their torment, a sinuous lifeline back into that abyss I had recklessly opened. "No!" I cried out, but the desperation pooled in my throat, choked out by the overwhelming presence that fluttered in my periphery. "I didn't mean top lease, just let me go." The shadows coiled tighter, tendrils scraping along my skin as if searching for spots that would invite them in. I felt a rush of ice crawl across my back, penetrating the depths of my soul. "Let us in," it sighed, a chorus that rose and fell through the air, hypnotizing with its sickening allure. I backed away, feeling the stifling atmosphere wrap around me in a crushing embrace, each shadow an echo of past mistakes I could not escape. "If you're here, then how do I stop this?" The question hung in the air like a noose, drawing the shadows closer, distorting their forms into grotesque parodies of life and anguish. They answered in a cacophony of cries that clawed at my sanity. "You must learn the truth," they beckoned, shadows unfolding to reveal the cold glow of a new message across the screen, shimmering gray with a terrifying promise: "Your sins are boundless. You are not just a storyteller, you are the harbinger of their plight. Face them." Instantly, tempests of anguish spiraled around me as the spectral forms surged with sudden vigor, their whispers swirling. Then suddenly, as if in response to my need, the screen flashed open, revealing a new link, a dark URL I had no recollection of. Each letter poured with malice, promising to unveil secrets, truths splattered thick with suffering that my eyes begged to see. The darkness surged forward, devouring the space I once considered my sanctuary. I could see them now, reflections of those I had wronged, clinging to every word I'd typed in ignorance, every tale I had woven for entertainment's sake. That I took a shaky breath, a series of emotions crashing through my heart: fear, regret, a longing for absolution. They flooded my senses and toyed with the realities of who I was now. What if I confront them? What if I stand against this darkness? As if in answer, the shadows drew back, creating an opening that felt disarming yet filled with foreboding. The darkness seemed to shimmer with expectation, inviting me deeper into its embrace. Yet, just as I transitioned my weight, the air shifted around me. A scream erupted, alive with despair, immediate and echoing with dread. No. I wailed, realizing too late the danger of my naivety. The soft melody of laughter rippled beneath the surface, and then, the shadowy form beside me twisted, seizing my arm with chilling intent that sent shards of ice through my veins. It pulled me toward the open maw of darkness before me, a vortex spiraling with a chaotic longing to consume everything I was. Clenching my teeth, I felt my consciousness waver against the tide of despair. Would I become another victim, entrapped forever in the digital hell I had codified? In one final, desperate act of rebellion, I lunged forward, fingers groping for the laptop screen just as another voice surged behind me. You'll never leave this place. There it was again, another figure merging into the void beside the original grotesque whom I now recognized had features of every story, every anguish I had stoked and every victim who hadn't yet found peace, and as my hand closed around the laptop it shattered into fragments of cold light, whirling around me like a hypnotic storm, glimmering with all the faces I had unleashed, all the darkness I had drawn forth. In that moment, my terrified eyes caught a glimpse of the world beyond the shadows. The doorway now closed, the phone blackened and silent. Everything was wrong, and the moment I dared to hope, something from behind seized my throat. A new whisper pierced the chaos with chilling clarity, intimate and threatening. Welcome home. And then, the darkness claimed me. The stillness returned, but it was a stillness tainted with malice, thickened air that crackled with lingering dread. My body felt heavy and immobile, pinned beneath the specter of that chilling voice as shadows swirled and whispered like a phantasmagoric tempest. I blinked, desperate to dispel the darkness clinging to my vision, but the gloom was no longer just ethereal, it had seeped into my skin, an uninvited stain that twisted my nerves into knots of fear. Welcome home, it echoed again, twisted malice layered within the tone, a perverse revelry in the suffering that lay ahead. As my heart raced and my breaths quickened, cold tendrils of shadow threaded through me, exploring every pore and crevice as if searching for the very core of my vulnerability. I was no longer in my familiar room, but a landscape of swirling shadows, an endless void where time and space had been erased. The weight of despair ebbed and flowed like a tide, cocooning me in an eternal night where phantoms danced just beyond my reach, their eyes glinting with unearthly hunger. Those who listen must pay the price, a chorus of whispers murmured, disembodied yet eerily comforting. You wanted their stories, now you shall be part of them. Each syllable wrapped around me like a shroud, the air thickening with palpable sorrow until it became unbearable. I glanced down at my hands, trembling, fair skin marred with pulsing shadows that coiled eagerly around my fingers. They looked ecstatic, exultant at my fear. I could feel their hunger gnawing at the edges of my sanity, urging me to relinquish any remnants of resistance. In that moment of clarity, as dread clawed at my throat, I realized that these were not merely the voices of the tormented, they were a legion born of my creations, twisted by my words, seeking their vengeance through the very fabric of my reality. I had summoned them, crafted their anguish into narratives that had now devoured my essence. No more. I gasped, grappling with the gravity of my choices, my pleas almost drowned out by the cacophony swirling around me. What do you want from me? They responded in a symphony of agony, voices layering upon one another like a grotesque tapestry woven from despair. To complete the cycle, you must tell their truths. One voice rose above the rest, dripping with venomous triumph. The tales untold, the horrors hidden. Bring them to life, and you will find salvation. Salvation? Or another descent into futility? My chest tightened at the oppressive weight of despair. What if I refuse? I yelled, the anger fueled by fear boiling over into defiance. For a moment, the shadows recoiled, a breath held in anticipation. Almost instantly, icy fingers gripped my throat again, dragging me closer to the shadows, morphing into diabolical shapes, grotesque parodies of the suffering they embodied. I could see the anger unearthed in their eyes, a turbulent sea of grief and rage. Refusal is no option. You already chose your fate when you let us in. A new terror emerged, a sudden pressure building within the depths of my heart. I could feel it rising like an ominous tide, something merciless awakening within me. No, no. Panic surged through me as I fought against their grasp. I won't give you anything, but the shadows surged forward, pouncing on my resistance, drowning me in waves of sorrow twisted with decay. They wrapped around my psyche, their whispers crystallizing into imagery that broke against my mind like shattering glass flashes of every story, every victim, swirling into a chaotic maelstrom. Each one tore at me, an unholy map of pain submerged within my thoughts. You will utter our names. You will tell every horror, every tragedy, and never find peace. His voice, resonating like a tainted bell, pushed me closer to despair as I gasped for breath, the air charged with the chill of inevitable surrender. Just as the shadows began consuming me whole, a blinding light erupted from the depths of my memory as me laptop. Was there a glimmer of hope beyond this abyss? I reached for it, fingers grappling with the void around me, only to feel the overwhelming pressure clenched tighter with every second of vulnerability. No. I cried out, tears spilling into the mist as desperation etched lines of despair across my face. The air stirred, rolling around me like a living thing, pulsating with energy as the shadows writhed and contorted in anticipation of my capitulation. That I felt drawn to the fading light, an instinctual urge to reclaim my own narrative, yet the force binding me was relentless. Your reckoning is inevitable. They howled, voices echoing like 1,000 souls in torment, taunting me with the unity of their anguished existence, and amidst the cacophony, a glimmer of clarity cut through, a single thread of resolve igniting my will. I wouldn't be silenced. Not yet. I summoned every memory of my mistakes, every hollowed-out word I'd documented, transforming my despair into armor. Let's begin the stories, I gasped, rallying every ounce of strength I could muster, ready to capture the darkness. But before my words could blossom into existence, a terrible roar filled the air. With unholy fury, the shadows surged forth, consuming the very light I summoned, drowning my voice beneath their insidious tide. And in the depth of that panic-riddled moment, I knew whatever intertwined fate awaited me, it would be a narrative bred of horror, and I would be its unwilling scribe. Just as I was enveloped in the embrace of shadows, the ground shuddered beneath me, and a deafening crash echoed from above. A breach in reality? With a fierce, unyielding pull, a shadow reached out, seizing my arm, drawing me toward the depths that beckoned with sinister promises. I felt the chasm yawning wide, ready to swallow me whole. Then, without warning, from the depths of the chaos emerged a harrowing figure from the gloom, forming into one I recognized but never expected to see, their face twisted in a vicious grimace of vengeance. Why did you bring us here? They howled, an unbearable knowledge dawning upon me, pinning me in shared horror. Just like that, the darkness began to close in, and I realized this wasn't just despair anymore, it was a reckoning. And I would either confront my sins or become yet another story for the haunting echo of their voices. The shadows coiled tighter around me as the figure emerged, illuminated by a ghostly glow that pulsed erratically, bathing the void in twisted clarity. My heart raced as I recognized their fractured visage, the hollow eyes filled with familiar resentment. A victim from one of my stories, a digital wraith born from the fate I had chronicled. Why did you bring us here? They howled again, the pain in their voice a sharpened blade that twisted deeper into my gut. It was a question layered with layers of betrayal, accusation sharper than a knife drawn across flesh. I stumbled back, my own horror reflected in their gaze, stark and unyielding that I didn't mean to. The words barely escaped my lips, fragile as gossamer. The memories of their suffering came rushing back, every line I had penned branding my conscience with a fiery shame. I thought what? That you could play the puppeteer. Another figure emerged, this one with an ethereal robe swirling around them, face shrouded in darkness yet unmistakably familiar. A victim I had forgotten, their narrative erased from my mind like a fleeting dream. We were lives, not tales. You wrote our misery for your own gain. Stop. Please. I begged, but the chorus of voices grew louder, layered upon one another, each accusing line punctuated with grief. Pieces of your twisted truth made tangible, they wailed. You wanted stories, and we are your currency, tales that never found rest within the pages. You have crafted a prison built on our pain. With each accusation, the surrounding shadows pulsed angrily, vibrating with a malevolence that stirred the very fabric of the void. I could feel their rage, the disembodied voices melding into an orchestra of torment, circling, suffocating, a cyclone of anguish that threatened to sweep me away. Enough! I screamed, my voice raw. I wanted nothing more than to turn back time, to snuff out the darkness born of my words. I never wanted this. You can't run from our truth, the first figure spat, their frustration a whip-crack in the suffocating air. The shadows lunged forward, consuming the ground beneath us, drawing closer in their frenzy. Every step they advanced punctured me deeper, spikes of grief weaving through my heart, a tale not just of guilt, but of complicity. But then, amidst the encroaching dread, I felt an unexpected flicker within, mesomething potent, a concentrated desperation clawed from the very depths of my humanity. If there is a way to bring you peace, I gasped, willing the shadows to halt their advance. If you will guide me, I can tell your story differently. I can expose the monster who spun this evil web. The figure before me, streaming in dark robes, momentarily halted, their expression flickering with uncertainty. You think the same words that cursed us can save you? A chilling breeze swept through the void, an echo of despair passing through me, as each shadow froze, coalescing into an expectant angst, pulsating like a heart waiting for rebirth. My conviction battered against the walls of terror, desperately trying to cling to the slivers of hope breaking through. Let me try. The plea clawed at my throat. I can write the truth of our despair without carnival glitz. I can tell the world what really happened. You will not be mere specters, you will be heroes. As soon as the last word left my lips, something in the air shifted, a crack in the oppressive shadows. The victims hesitated, their faces momentarily still, morphed between rage and a gentler light, an acknowledgement of possibility hidden within their pain. But then a deeper rumble echoed from the darkness, a foreboding reminder that the malevolent force was no longer merely an abstract horror. A shape loomed just beyond the curtain of shadows, an entity birthed from hate and wrath, the architect of the darkness that clung to me. Foolish scribe, a rasping voice emerged, thrumming with a sinister cadence, as the shadows around me flickered in acknowledgement of their master. You think you can rewrite what is already etched in flesh? You think words can erase sins? With blinding speed, it lunged from the engulfing void, claws elongated, eyes ablaze with malice. The chaos broke apart, unveiling another realm behind its twisted form, a heart of binary nights and corrupted data scintillating with feverish intensity. I was catapulted into that nightmare realm, my body suspended between two worlds, the weight of the stories, both alive and demanding, wrapped around me like a vice. The darkness pulled me closer to the shimmering portal, an abyss of unspeakable horrors, a realm where countless stories merged into one disgraceful truth. Join us, and you will never escape their fate, the monstrosity growled, the shadows sharpening into pointed barbs, my own words becoming chains that could bind my existence forever. But before its claws could seize me, I felt the warmth of their presence, those I had wronged, surrounding me in a flurry of light. We fight, together, they whispered as a flicker of hope ignited within me, the darkness battling against the narrative I could attempt to weave. And as I stood on the precipice of two eternal voids, the revelation washed over me, question burning down to a solitary thought: would I dare to embrace the very darkness I had conjured, or become yet another tale among the forsaken? In that moment, the reality shifted, the screams of the shadows intertwining with the cries of the silenced as an undeniable truth stared me down, ready to tear through the fragile shell of my resolve. Time twisted as I realized my greatest nightmare was yet to come, looming just behind choice and consequence. While the shadows circled, they began whispering once more, waiting for the ink to flow, prepared to rewrite my own story in blood. The air thickened with a palpable terror, a suffocating grasp that tightened around my throat as I floated between two worlds, the cherished ghosts of my victims swirling in a tempest of desperation and vengeance. The shadows pulsed like an anguished heart, and the figure looming before me, architect of this torturous prison, grinned, a rictus of malice carved deep into its grotesque visage. You wish to tell a new story. You crave redemption, it hissed, voice dripping with contempt. How quaint. But you lack the most potent ink of all, the truth. You are but a vessel, a shell that echoes the pain you have conjured. You think they will forgive you? They will drag you down into the abyss along with them. As the voices ached around me, I felt their anguish resonate with near unbearable intensity. Each cry was a dagger, a stark reminder of the lives I had spun into tales of suffering for entertainment. The shadows crept closer, their whispers growing louder, with each word seeking to turn my own thoughts against me. Desperation clawed at my reason, urging me to fight, to take a stand. But how could I combat the very essence of what I had created? By confronting it, I murmured softly, a shaky resolve forming. Light splintered from the figures encircling me, illuminating their pained features just enough to see the flicker of hope buried beneath layers of grief. They waited for me to act, to rise from my own cowardice and face the shadows of my creation. But the malevolent entity wouldn't let me stay anchored in this fragile moment of clarity. It stepped closer, its form shifting, bending reality itself, eyes glimmering like shards of broken glass. You wish to fight against me? A mere storyteller against the one who birthed the screams? Remember, you are bound to their anguish, and it is I who sows despair through every tale. Panic surged through me as I recalled those final lines from the last story I had penned, the words echoing like a death knell. Would my narratives become the binding chains that held me in a limbo of torment, condemning me to forever walk among the restless spirits I had tormented? No. My voice rose defiantly, a defiance born of fear and loathing turned outward. I will tell your story differently. You deserve to be seen, not just as victims but as warriors fighting against a cruelty that no one could fathom. A guttural laugh erupted from the entity, shaking the shadows around me with an undulating force, making even the broken echoes of my victims' cries falter momentarily. Words are fickle things, child. They bend and warp upon the breath of the speaker. But know this, for every tale you seek to craft, someone's soul will shatter. This revelation sent a jolt through me, a primal dread clawing at the remnants of my courage. Each story I crafted was a contract with the darkness, binding their suffering to my intentions. I faltered as memories of the pain and the glorified misery I had chronicled streamed through me like a torrential flood, each one a story whose ink had dried black with betrayal that I never wanted. I began, but the shadows, those former glimmers of humanity, interrupted me, their disembodied whispers melding into one fierce sound, a chant rising to drown out the chaos. You wanted words. You wanted heroes, yet you buried us under chapters of neglect. The shadows surged, an inchoate leviathan whose anger surged through the air with a life of its own, constricting around my reality. Despair clawed at my throat, attempting to silence my resolve, as the manifestation of dread stepped closer, eyes narrowed in contempt. You cannot escape your chains, it sneered, raising a clawed hand that flickered with dark energy, palpable and seeping with malice. Accept your fate, little scribe. Embrace the weight of their stories, become one with your wretched tales. Before I could summon another thought, pain lanced through my body as I felt the shadows grasping, pulling me with violent force toward that shimmering abyss behind the dark figure, entwining me in their suffocating embrace. Searing melancholy tore through me, fracturing my heart into shards of anguish as screams erupted around us, but then, amidst the chaos, a singular, piercing cry cut through the dark, a cry that felt achingly familiar. My heart stopped, shadowed terror morphing into pure terror as I recognized the voice. Help me. It was one of the characters I had once written, a figure lost in the depths of forgotten Talisa, a child I had cast off in a sentence as mere fodder for horror. In that single moment, dread crystallized into unyielding horror. The shadows hissed with malice, surrounding the pleading voice as if preparing to smother it into silence, but in that profound moment of horror came a fresh resolve. If that child's story could pierce through the darkness, perhaps I could rewrite fate itself, risk everything and defy the depth of despair that I lunged forward against the tug of the darkness, calling upon the flickering warmth of the souls I had wronged, channeling their rage and sorrow into an act of defiance. I can still write for you. I can give your story the voice it deserves. As my words echoed into the void, shadows shrieked and writhed, recoiling momentarily. I felt the brush of their pain surge through me, a chaotic storm of unresolved stories eager to break free. Yet, the malevolent force howled, ripping through the fabric of my resolve, forewarning of the darkness ready to consume my very essence, and then, as I clutched to that faint glimmer of hope with desperation, I felt the icy grip of claws on my legs, the dark entity roaring in fury. You will not escape. Embrace the ending you have crafted, the one written in blood. The shadows surged forward, and just as my fingers grazed the ethereal light, the only point where I hoped to reclaim their stories, the darkness enveloped me completely, wrapping around my consciousness like a vice. The weight of their stories collided with mine, plunging me into a void where the echoes of those I had wronged became a cacophony of rage, sorrow, and despair. As the world around me spiraled, everything shook violently, tremors beneath my feet igniting something within me, a flicker of defiance. But then, shockingly, through the tempest came a shriek of realization, ripping through the air, overriding the anguish around me. You are not just writing anymore. You are the tale. In that moment, as the shadows threatened to drown my resolve, I saw the glimpse of what waited ahead, a horror beyond comprehension, awaiting to be penned with my own trembling hand. As the shadows warped around me, I fought against the crushing weight of despair. My soul felt as if it was cracking under the pressure of their cries, twisting my perception of reality into a grotesque reflection. The dark entity's voice thundered in the depths, feeding on my fear, intoxicated by my torment. Welcome to your new existence, it snarled, its visage warping, becoming something less human and more of a nightmarish conglomeration of bone and shadow. You sought to tell their stories, now, you'll live them. Every tale you've spun has dug deeper into the earth, their suffering echoes latent within the wires of your very creation that I struggled to breathe amidst the maelstrom. The memories of each character, each victim pierced through my mind, a gauntlet of anguish I had rendered into mere narratives. I was plagued by visions of their faces, their final moments draped with horror, illuminating the path I had followed. Each snapshot sharpened, each scream became a vice squeezing my chest that I am no longer the writer. I am the ink, I hollered into the abyss, and for a moment, the shadows halted, as if my words had forged a bridge over the anguished surface of my creation. I had to confront the truth. I was both the creator and the Kalamisha puppeteer, ensnared by my own strings, but as I gathered fragmented pieces of my will, I felt the ground beneath twist and churn, thrumming with a sinister energy. The air thickened, buzzing with an electric tide that ignited every haunting memory. A cacophony erupted, the whispering spirits resonating louder, and without warning, a blinding burst of luminescence erupted in the void, tearing through the dark. Suddenly, a torn fragment of a digital landscape spat forth before me, lines of code and flashes of a screen filled with anguished faces encapsulated within their pixelated presence. A horrific manifestation of a cybercrime script refused to die. It was here that the stories I had penned came crashing back, transformed into a living nightmare. Your words unlocked them. A chorus of voices cried in unison, lingering in the very air I breathed. And now, they looked to you to write the ending. With renewed apprehension, I realized I was not alone. Figures emerged from the flickering screen, a horde of jagged silhouettes, victims caught in a realm of broken technology, mouths wide in screams that never had true sound. The malevolence rolling from their forms melded with my own dread, each share of fear merging with the relentless terror that clawed at my consciousness. The dark figure smirked and pointed a taloned finger towards the shrieking digital abyss as if displaying a very own creation. These are but reflections of your chronicled pain. Dive deeper into the cyberquagmire you've created, dear scribe. Relive each horror until it fractures your mind, and then, without warning, I felt the ground beneath me rupture. A tunnel opened up, a vortex swirling with grotesque imagery and relentless whispers. I knew I should hesitate, but the pulsing energy pulled me toward it. Was it my desire to save them, or merely the remnants of my own guilt that urged me forward? Help us. Rewrite our story. They begged, screaming in pain as I teetered on the precipice of that gaping chasm. I glanced back at the specter of darkness, its eyes gleaming with cruel delight. Could I truly wrest control of their fate back from the abyss, just as a beacon of courage ignited within me, summoning the desperate determination that had clawed its way up through the shadows? A voice pierced through the choking depths of my conscience, one unmistakably familiar and desperately haunting. Don't let them pull you in. It was the child, the face, pale and terrified, filled with the horror of expectation that twisted my heart. The last tendrils of courage I had found frayed as I plunged into the memory-laden void, yearning for salvation. The shimmer of light, but instead, I felt a grip icy and powerful as if death itself bore down upon me, embrace the tale, or face an unwritten consequence. The dark deity boomed, vibrating through my bones, shattering my momentary resolve that I hovered on the brink, my breath hitching. Could this cycle truly be broken? Would I rewrite this tale, or become another ghost woven into the fabric of my past misdeeds? And then, as reality twisted around me into a horrific spiral, the child's spectral form surged forth, eyes wide with terror, mouth opened in silent plea. In that fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of Ida's severed wire, sparkling with unwritten possibilities snaking through the dark abyss. Choose. It echoed throughout the void as the darkness surged to claim me, the anguished cries of those I had created drowning my thoughts. With the last ounce of strength, I reached toward the severed wire, a path steeped in both dread and ambiguity. But as my fingers brushed against it, a violent shock coursed through me, a visceral reminder that the darkest tales often come with unfathomable prices. And in that moment, amidst the celestial chaos of their unfurling stories, I understood. I was standing at the precipice of choice, and the moment I touched that wire, I couldn't turn back. But just before I could reach it, the ground trembled violently, and a loud crack shattered the air. The digital realm began imploding, darkness curling around me, and as the tether of my fate was about to be severed, I heard one last whisper bubble up from the abyss, a terrifying promise: you will rise again, but never free. In that split second, everything erupted into chaos, shadows swallowing the light, and I felt the fire of forgotten souls engulfing me whole. And then, just as I resigned myself to the spiral of darkness, I fell. The descent was vertiginous, the chaos around me morphing into an endless void, spiraling away into an unfathomable chasm of dread. I shut my eyes, wishing to block out the vision of abject horror that swirled just beyond the thin veil of memory, yet the echoes of long-forgotten screams clawed at the fragile edges of my consciousness. As I fell, I felt my fragmented being unravel in the dark. Seconds, no, eternity slipped away, each moment marked by a cacophony of regretful voices, a haunting chant of "Writer" that wrapped around me like chains. "You can't escape this," they taunted, reverberating through the darkness that cradled me deadly close. Time had lost all meaning within this pit of despair. I felt as if I was merging with the terror itself, a grotesque amalgamation of all the suffering I had inadvertently scribed into existence, and then, impact. The ground collided with my body, too solid, too real, wrenching a strangled cry from my throat. Dirt and debris slashed at skin I couldn't see, and grime clawed at the corners of my mouth as I gasped for air that tasted of decay and loss. I pushed myself up, straining to regain some semblance of clarity, only to find I was engulfed in an underground cavern, the walls flickering with a dim, otherworldly glow that seemed to pulse like a dying heartbeat. Ghostly tendrils of vapors threaded through the stone, illuminating the shadows with fragments of past stories, the faces of those I had captured in their final terror. They floated around me, whispering their tales in an ethereal chorus. The fragmented bodies of these forgotten souls remained cruelly tethered to me, their agony and betrayal painting the cavern in hues of nightmarish beauty. "Do you see now?" the chorus echoed, their voices swirling in an intoxicating blend of despair and hope. "You thought your words were just ink, they are a chain that binds us to this place." Panic surged through me as I staggered backward, my feet slipping over unyielding rock. I wrestled with the truth that clawed at my mind, a gnawing realization that this cavern was a prison, a timeless mausoleum where story and flesh merged into one. Grasping at the remaining threads of the lives I had turned into mere fiction, then I noticed the glint. A shimmering object lay nestled in a dark crevice, a twisted relic of the cybernetic world I previously inhabited. With cautious steps born more of dread than resolve, I approached. As I reached out to grasp it, the air thickened, and the cries intensified, clawing at my resolve, each lamentation piercing deeper into my soul. "Touch it, and you'll understand the price of your pain," the mourners chanted, their faces blurring into grotesque parodies of twisted grief. I wrestled with fear and curiosity as my fingers found the object, an obsolete piece of technology, the remnant of a cybercrime I had written, forever tethered to the digital agonies now anchored within this cavern. As I slid it into my palm, images flickered to life before my eyes, data streams of horrors passed cascading around me in raw, electrifying bursts. I saw the lives I had turned to ashes, victims of betrayal, stolen identities, and the inexorable horrors I had manufactured. Their tortured faces blurred, but in the chaos, one voice gained clarity, piercing through the mass. It was the frightened child. "Rewrite it. Change the ending." The spectral echo implored, resonating deeply within my bones. A plot fragmented in desperation, each demand straining against the crumbling grasp of my will. Each phantom face pressed closer, beautiful yet terrifying in their haunting plead. In that instant, my mind flashed with the possibilities. Could I truly alter the narratives I had once consumed with careless abandon? The memories warped and twisted around me, waiting for a scribe to take the pen. But as I felt the weight of the choice, shadows twisted and coiled back, forming a figure I recognized all too well. The dark entity emerged from the flickering light, its smile a jagged cut in the fabric of despair. "No, dear writer," it sneered, eyes glinting with malice. "This is where you learn the true cost of creation." The cavern began to tremble, rocks falling and shaking loose from the ceiling above like the retribution of vengeful spirits. I turned to flee, but the walls pulsed, constricting like a vice. I stumbled back, frantic, harried by the faces of the lost, their eyes pleading for freedom, for an ending, for anything beyond this cavern of horror. But before I could grasp any thread of hope, the weight lifted and the entities vanished, replaced by an overwhelming rush of darkness that surged toward me, consuming the remnants of light like autumn leaves in a gale. I gasped, realizing in that blink of horror that the shadow was not just darkness, but something profound and laden with consequences. Sand shifted beneath my feet, and I felt myself teetering on the edge once more. The luminous artifact slipped from my grasp, falling into the void with a thud that reverberated like a heartbeat. In that moment, the echoes of past and present converged into a single, overwhelming realization that I was no longer just a writer. I was a conduit for every story left untold, every horror unimagined. And as the shadows gathered around me, now a living entity drawing breath through despair, I heard the child's voice rebounding in my mind, whispering an ultimatum: "Decide now, or be forever lost." With panic consuming me, I reached for the darkness, knowing that embracing it might yield a path to rewrite our fates. Yet just as I was about to plunge into the inky depths, the cavern floor crumbled away, and with a deafening roar, the truth shattered above us. As the ground fell away into oblivion, I heard one last whisper slip away into the void, chilling me to the bone: "The tale has just begun and I control the pen now." In that instant, everything went dark. The darkness was absolute, a suffocating void that enveloped me. As I drifted in a nightmarish limbo, floating through my own abysmal fears, something shifted. Fragments of consciousness flickered alive, each memory clawing its way through the shadows that had robbed me of my own identity. I could feel their remnants, the echoes of my past stories, fighting to break free, to be released from the cold grip of the tale I had wrought. But the price of that release felt like an insurmountable cost, an anchor dragging me deeper into the uncaring abyss. Then, a voice emerged from the clatter of darkness, its tone rich with malice and mockery. "Welcome back, dear scribe. I knew you would return. After all, the stories you have spun are not simply words, they are bindings. I have waited patiently for you to understand the true nature of your gift." I recognized those words. They were the very whispers that had propelled me into this dark labyrinth. The entity that had tormented me once more coalesced before my eyes, its grotesque features shimmering with that same fiendish glee that had haunted my thoughts since the moment I unlocked its door. Each heartbeat echoed louder as I fought to reclaim my light. "You were meant to write our tales, to embrace our suffering, but you failed to grasp the gravity of what you created," it continued, the shadows swirling around it like a cloak of despair. "Do you see now? Your words have become our prison and your demise." The ground trembled beneath my feet, pulling me downward as the shadows coiled closer. I could feel their yearning, taste their hunger clawing for release, and just as they were about to surge forth, a flash of clarity jarred through my mind. I had thought I was a mere observer, a writer spinning narratives that unfolded in fictional realms. But I was so much more. I was the unfortunate weaver who had unknowingly sewn their anguish into the very fabric of my being. In this moment of reckoning, the child's voice echoed again, a gentle guide amidst the tumultuous storm. "Change our stories, set us free," it whispered, pouring forth desperation. My heart twisted, urgency battling despair. I took a quivering step forward, the shadows hissing in alarm, but before I could voice my resolve, the entity bellowed, "You cannot rewrite your own nightmares." It lunged, the darkness reaching for me, clawing and tearing at my flesh. The air vibrated with their collective pain, each haunting cry threatening to implode the fragile threads of my sanity. No, I gasped, staring into the vortex of shadows that blurred reality. I can change it. I can alter this cycle. With newfound strength, I clutched its outstretched hand, a wicked blend of horrified acceptance and ingenuity. I'm not merely your scribe, I am the bearer of your truth. I will expose the rotten core, the terrors I once exploited. The darkness faltered, caught in a moment of confusion that sliced through its furious visage. Suddenly, I was pulled into a dizzying whirlpool of light and shadow, a maelstrom of stories converging, intertwining into a single narrative. Each face, each life intertwined, flickered momentarily into existence, a symphony of lost souls crying out in unison, begging for release. Tell them who we are. The chorus urged, a cacophony that amplified around me. Expose the horrors of the digital maze you summoned. Show them our suffering, only then will you understand your truth. In your ruin lies salvation, I roared, heart hammering in my chest, rage transforming into power, beckoning the energy of my past transgressions. I lifted my hands to the shadows, desperate to break the bonds that tethered them. You are not mere victims, you are warriors now. Your stories, our stories, will shake the world awake. The shadows recoiled, swirling furiously around me, but my voice grew louder, the determination swallowing every flicker of doubt. I will not become the storyteller, I will share your truth, the horrors woven into the very air we breathe. Light erupted forward, a glowing filament breaking through the Aurora key to unleash the trapped stories. The shadows howled in agony, swirling furiously as the nexus of our shared torment began to fracture. In that moment of clarity, I reached for the sacred pulse of my forgotten inspiration, the truth lost amidst the chaos, and I willed the words anew. This is not just my tale but a reckoning, I chanted, drawing forth the very essence of their struggles, weaving them into one collective narrative. In darkness, you shall rise. In pain, strength shall emerge. For you are no longer stories to be cherished or shunned but calls for action and awakening. The shadows roared, battling against the light that surged from within, but as I spoke my truths, the light grew brighter, pouring forth from my core. I felt the shadows dissipating, their voices intertwining with my own, forming a new and vibrant tapestry, each thread woven with authenticity, raw and unapologetic. And in that blinding brilliance, I finally understood the depths of my hubris. I was never meant to own their stories, they belonged to those who had suffered, each line an echo of pain yet coalescing in strength when shared with the world. Suddenly, silence thrummed in the air, an overwhelming stillness that enveloped me like a warm embrace. The darkness that once threatened to consume my existence had transformed, morphing into something unrecognizably, a canvas for their stories to be etched anew. With one final breath, I allowed the darkness to envelop me fully, integrating our truths, no longer a remnant of regret but a powerful symphony of redemption. I felt every lost soul around me, their tears mixing with the courage rising from the ashes of their lost tales, ascending into reality no longer silenced but heard, and then, the world erupted, the dark and the light converged as I opened my eyes, stepping into a realm transformed, alive with vibrant stories that rippled through the digital landscape. The whispers were gone, replaced with the pulse of understanding, the lives I once stole now echoing through an endless frontier, waiting to be told, waiting for change. But as the new dawn illuminated the horizon, a familiar chill crawled up my spine, the voice echoing back from the shadows, whispering sweetly, "Welcome back, mighty scribe, it is time to write again." And in that final moment, realization dawned, a haunting truth that would linger like mist in the back of my mind, chilling and irresistible. I was free, yet forever shackled to the very tales I had vowed to rewrite. The darkness never truly left, it lingered, a part of me now, waiting for its moment to pounce.